Alright, welcome back to Super Sentai episode 525. Well, we got a lot to discuss here for this one. Basically, it's like two minis, two mini series for Lupinranger vs. Patranger, uh, their first film, and episodes 28 and 29 for the show. Yeah, I decided just to go ahead and watch these, just to get these out of the way. So let's first discuss the weird combination. And this one is a lead into the very first movie for Lupin vs. Patranger, known as El Film. Yes, what a very somewhat original title for the movie. So, it's all about magnetism. Yes, magnetism for this one. Oh yes, it is magnetism. That's pretty much basically so. The monster this one is basically a subordinate, a man named Wilson, which you find out he's actually one of the villains of one of the main villains of the movie. The movie is interesting to say the least. Yeah, no, he's subordinate. He looks almost exactly like him, except he looks more damaged. You're like, really? Why the heck would I do that for? I have no idea. Now, technically, in a way, the weird combination is actually the third special, and the other one I'm discussing afterwards is the fourth special. Now the first two, I'm not sure about now. The first special they had was Transformation Lessons. It's not something I'm interested in per se. Friends Army, Girlfriend's Army, this one might be something I might be interested in watching, maybe. It's probably like one episode, so there's that. But as for weird combination, this one basically, it's very important to watch this one because this two-part miniseries is a prologue into a film. So the monsters one is called Magnapole. Yeah, and the whole thing is like, oh, let's have it where, believe it or not, let's have it where he has his magnetism stick the two Red Rangers together. First, basically, in the form of hugging. Yes, hugging. Ah, there it is. Yeah. Yeah, it's all basically like stick together, and at one point he's brought to the restaurant, but basically he's in disguise. He basically has his eyes covered, so he doesn't find out that the Lupinrangers are the employees of this restaurant. So they come a genius way to get them unmagnetized from each other by simply, after running around and still trying to get the Lupin collection piece. So Kara, he proceeds to have Panther Red, where tie his hands to a pole and have basically his mech pull him away, which it works. And though he ends up bringing it together, and eventually they they get cooperation from Noel, obviously, and they get the piece out, and I'm looking at the piece, and I saw here like, yeah, that looks like one of the trans daggers from Gingaman. Yep, just repainted. I was kind of surprised to see that. And it's kind of something with the movie as well. Yeah, where it's just basically like I said, it's the old trans daggers, which I think they're called something else in the Sentai, but yeah. So he's defeated, and Wilson makes a brief appearance. Tease events moves like, oh, it's not about working together. And at one point, he magnetizes all the remaining Rangers together to where, like, Yellow is kind of almost into Pink's lap, and he smells like, oh, she smells nice. Umiko, of course, he decided Umiko is basically Lupin Yellow. So, and at one point, he's basically holding it. He's like, I gotta use the bathroom. And eventually, once they're freed, the first thing he does, goes to the bathroom. Yep. And then comes the movie, where we have this guy called Sherlock Holmes, which, from what I read, this is supposed to be Sherlock Holmes. But due to copyright issues, they couldn't call him that, so the character's obviously Sherlock Holmes in present day. And my guess is they wanted to include him because there was this, I think it was this early film in the early 1900s, which had Sherlock Holmes take on Andre Lupin. And the story itself was actually referenced in Aria Scarred Ammo, where the Lupin family is a rival of the Holmes family, which could basically, they have a little nod to there. This is maybe a nod to that, but, and like, oh, we have the monster Wilson, and he goes out, and we see like Sherlock Holmes, like we see this monster, which turns out it actually is Sherlock Holmes. The movie was really cool, and then at one point, the bad guys come to the ingenious idea to basically take the two Red Rangers to Backworld. You're thinking, wait, it's not the finale. Why the heck are they going there now? Good question. Where they basically are just supposedly killed by Wilson, Gooch, and Demia. He's the green guy who's the boss's right-hand man. And then they run into Jackpot Striker, which they leave inside the mansion, of course. And you're like, wow, this looks like something you would see in the finale. Why are we doing this in the movie? Good question. And then they just happen to end up in the room where the boss normally sits at this big table you see in the whole series. You're like, too early. You usually do this for the finale. Why the heck do this now? Good. That's why I keep saying this. Like, yeah, and they actually see him again. Now, these two, the last time they saw him was actually in the main show itself. So they know what the man looks like. So, yeah, and then of course they figure out a way to get back, and then of course they use. Remember. Oh yeah, the gold safe. You have to use 2 Lupin pieces to unlock it. Which they take the binoculars out, which of course Kari is tempted at it, but doesn't get it. And then you have Jackpot Striker control Gooch long enough for her to open up a portal for those two to escape, and leave the Lupin piece behind. Yes. And then eventually, well, of course, this Sherlock Holmes is actually revealed to be a monster. And eventually they get the pieces out of the two of them. Now, Sherlock Holmes, his piece is basically a repainted Kiranger orb thing, which I thought that was really cool. But Wilson's is interesting. His is a repainted Gigaman transformation device. You're like, wow, that is the second time in the show where they've used a transmission device, like the actual thing they wear on their wrist, as basically a Lupin collection piece. Yeah, and then, by the way, in episode 28, I think it was like 20, where one of the episodes is a repainted piece used by Hurricane, which I'll get that. And of course, they thanks to Jackpot Striker and Gulak Striker, they both had their both mechs and to beat the monster. Yeah, we'll do it again, but really cool this movie. It's only 30 minutes, surprisingly. And then comes another special. You're like, really? Another one? Yes, the last of the specials, believe it or not. This one basically reveals, like, and of course Noah basically points out basically that name for red and pink is similar to the names of their, well, things. But green is not. Apparently, green is. It turns out the Green Ranger here, Sakuya, is not the original candidate for the role. It turns out basically that he had a predecessor who got killed by a guy called Zen. Basically, the villain of the special. Yep, I was over that one. So. By a guy called Zonic Lee, who only appears in this special. He's referenced once in the show. And the Lupinrangers don't really do anything at all here. They're just here just to steal Zonic Lee's Lupin piece, was just repainted horn that was used by I kid you not, by Nanami in Hurricane. You're like, wow. Well, it wasn't a transformation device this time, but at least it was an object seen in the show, which was quite nice. Yep. That is interesting, the fact that, now, so far in the show at this point, thinking, okay, so how much of the show has reused devices from previous shows? Well, in the case of the first couple episodes, let's see. In episode 1, it was a cube. Not each previous shows. Definitely not the one in episode 2. 3, kind of looks like a repainted piece used for Andric the Evil from, I think it was, what was it? O-Ranger. Then we have this little wraparound thing for gymnastics. This in particular looks like similar to the one used in, like, I think it was Google V, I think it was. The one used in episode 6 is basically just a weird looking boot blender. Episode 7 is a magic lamp. 8, they have retrieved. I'm not going to talk about that one. For 9, which I'll see in 10, is basically like a battery. 9 is basically a wheel that was used probably in Goanger. And 12 was the first one to use a transformation device, this being the Chronomorpher from Time Ranger. Then we have episode 13, the scroll from Kaku Ranger. And then we have where, in episode 14, we have a repainted device from Ninjanger, a slingshot, a ball, a dagger, which has a symbol on it from, I think was like 5-man, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And then we have a little game thing that was used in episode 18. 19 is basically a fan. 20 is basically a bracelet. 20, yeah, it was 2 of them. 20 also had this like little mini camera. 20 was like a set of weights with a V on it. Looks like something from like Sun Vulcan. Then we have a gun. And then we have like a repainted Denziman ring, though it's bigger. Then we have this little baton, used 24. And this weird looking device, not sure what it was used for, it was used to use 25. And 26 was a mermaid statue. And of course the ones mentioned here. Yeah. It is overall a really, like, the specials themselves are really good. And the movie itself, I do recommend watching them because it further advanced the story of the show itself. Plus, unless you've watched Gingaman, Q Ranger, and Hurricaneger, you probably don't have any idea what these devices even are. You know, I know what they are because I've seen the shows. In 28, meanwhile, though, we have the solo appearance of Umiko's dad, who is very protective of her. And I think this is also the first time they've had a parent of one of the Rangers appear on the show. We did have it also in the previous show too, except it was for the little kid of the group, and they had the father. But yeah, it does happen, but not a lot. And he's very cooperative per se. And the monsters one named Ryogi, who's all about smoke turning people old. And The device itself is basically just because it looks like it's not like a plate. Look like some kind of look like some guns pointing upside down. I don't know exactly what they are, but of course this one is noteworthy for the debut of the Magic Fighter, which they actually made its debut in episode 20 of the show, but this first time it's used. The Magic Dial Fighter is basically a blimp, which allows it to form basically a bow. That here's the thing about the bow itself. We hear like, the music they play for it is the music from Ranger, which I thought that was really cool. They did that. It's almost like unintentionally this fact this season is not an anniversary season. It feels like anniversary with all these devices and nods to previous Sentai. You're like, wow. And you could say, oh, maybe because this is the in a way the final full season of Sentai released under the Heisei era, because the very next one is partially under Heisei and especially the Reiwa, like partway through the show. But 28 was really good. I like that one. 29 basically is a weird one. Like, oh yeah, let's have where the Red Ranger loses memories. Let's have where Kitroy loses memories. And memory you. And by the way, no monster this episode. You're like, wow, yeah, no monster. Yeah, no monster. It is just Goose using like one of the grunts to hold a device, which turns to be a camera, which could explain the whole thing with the photo stuff. And it unintentionally serves as a clip show episode. You're like, why? No idea why. But that's kind of what this episode is. It is a clip show to basically all the previous episodes of the show. Some anyways, but not all of them. But the 2 episodes are pretty good. Yep. But yeah, that's pretty much it for a particular video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share notifications. Next up we have is, well, more Sentai. Which I'm probably just going to go through all 4 remaining episodes and officially go on my break with Sentai. Yep. And then after that, basically, I'm going to do some reading afterwards while catching up with one series dub, and eventually I'll review that series dub. Which it is, I'll tell you all later, okay? But to the next video. Bye.